Hi, I'm Tony Miller reporting from the U.S. Book Show. We are here today with Phil Conserva and Louis Shaw Milito, co-founders of Boilermaker Entertainment and 15-year veterans of the CBS hit series CSI, Crime Scene Investigation, where the two work closely together producing over 300 hours of the world's most watched TV drama. Currently, Louis is producing the hit series Superman and Lois, and Phil is a producer on the forthcoming CBS show CSI Vegas, the reboot of the original series. Thanks, guys, for joining me today. I'm super excited. Have a few questions. Phil, can you tell us a little bit about your background in the business and what you're currently working on? Besides CSI, by the way.
Right. I was lucky enough to have studied English in college and learned that I wanted to continue a pursuit in storytelling, and was able to figure out how to get myself into Hollywood. I had some relationships, and those relationships are a big deal here. And one thing led to another. I started off as a PA on the 20th Century Fox lot, working on Chicago Hope medical show, which launched on CBS the same year as ER did on NBC. So there was like a big rivalry right there. And we had a great time working at the highest level of TV at the time. We had a lot of Bochco shows. This was a David Kelly show, and I really enjoyed being able to be a part of high-level television. So it's been a good step along the way, each step, and CSI was a huge one. So
it's amazing. Yeah, I really like the idea that you took your English Lit degree, and instead of telling stories in that way, you're just using a different medium to tell stories in another way. That's really amazing. Louis, tell us a little bit about your background and what you're currently working on besides Superman and Lois, by the way.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, actually have some similarities to Phil's route. I was an English Lit major in college as well, and attracted to storytelling and symbolism and imagery that gets conveyed on the page. So I started in this business doing set construction. My father was a construction coordinator in Los Angeles in the 70s. And so after college, I lived abroad for a year and then came back to LA and went to work swinging a hammer. Did that for about a couple of years. Knew I didn't want to pursue that for very long, but it was a good way to earn some money and get my feet into the business, and transitioned from there into production. Started off as an intern and a production assistant on low budget features, which is where I got my start. And I production assisted and came up through the assistant director ranks in what was quite a robust non-DGA independent film community in Los Angeles in the 90s. I worked on movies like Mallrats, Four Rooms, The Apostle with Robert Duvall. So had a really good run in that world, and then transitioned, joined the DGA after getting my days and going through the process that was laid out, and went to work in the union ranks and signed on to an unheard of show in the year 2000 called Crime Scene Investigation, and ended up staying on it with Phil for the entire 15-year run. And currently I am up in Vancouver. I'm in a trailer right now. We're shooting on a Saturday to get a location that we couldn't get during the week, and producing Superman and Lois for Warner Brothers, which is a different take on a superhero show, which we're all very proud of. And in addition to doing that, Phil and I work together in our development and production company, Boilermaker Entertainment, developing IP, both book IP and original projects, and trying to get them made into original series.
That's a really good segue, as a matter of fact. So this question's for either you, Louis, or you, Phil, either one. What are you looking for when you're looking at IP? What makes you want to take it on?
What do you think, Lou?
Um, it's a few things. I think compelling characters are one of the first things that grabs you, because I think ultimately, no matter whether storylines wax or wane or are strong or not strong in the course of telling a season-long series, the characters are what bring people back and what people really attach to and identify with and want in their homes for hours on end each evening. So compelling characters, a plausible storyline, and that isn't to say something that is bound by what we currently know and as known physics or reality. So I think the stories can be grounded and real, or they can be outlandish and currently physically impossible. But if the way the story is laid out answers the right questions and has a plausible approach, then it will make sense and it will work. So those two things, and then I think it needs to have enough material within the story to sustain 3 seasons of storytelling. So avenues to go down, characters to explore, and if the book itself or a short story doesn't have that within the confines of the 2 covers of the book, then does the story allow itself to be elaborated on?
That's interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting because you wouldn't think that a novella would necessarily play well onto a smaller, like it would be more for a bigger screen, but I can see as long as you can expand that universe a bit, that you can make it play on a smaller screen for a longer period of time. So I do understand that you have a first look deal with Vesuvian Media Group. So you get to see their forthcoming books before anybody else does. Can you tell us any books that you're currently developing?
Sure, we can tell you a couple. We've got what I love about Vesuvian and our relationship, Natalia Gandolfo, who's the master of disaster there and creation. She's become a real dear friend of ours, and we've cherished this relationship, and it's really still on a blooming stage. So we are looking forward to a real fun future with her and the company. And so we've got a number of books. What's great about Vesuvian is there's a good wide berth of genres, from sci-fi to crime, mystery, even YA, and all of those opportunities are great for us because we have a big, long background in crime drama, and it's nice to start, exercising other muscles. And so we have some real interest in a lot of the different genres, one of which we currently have a book called Creepy Christmas, which is actually an adult coloring book. Primarily.
I've seen that. I've seen it out there. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's something that we were drawn to right away because we just love the idea of this old world origin stories behind what it is that Santa Claus was, or the black wolves of Iceland. There's just characters that we don't know about here in the States so much because they're international lore. Mm-hmm. And so that book really opened our minds to creating a real kind of a dark space in Christmas versus all the happy-go-lucky Christmas stuff, which is something that Liz and I kind of like to do, is stay on the dark side of things a little bit. So we're working with the writer on that, and we have a great pitch for it, and we're taking it out to town now, and we really see that as a good seasonal series. We want it to be a series that keeps returning, and I think it could be a franchise that expands into other seasons of different holidays or myths. And so, the sky's the limit on that one. We have a romance book series that's been quite successful by Abby Glines called Rosemary Beach. And we are working with a writer on that. And when it comes to these books that we have that we're really in gear with, we're luckily working with some powerful management companies in Hollywood, which has been a real good step for us to get those relationships. And what do you say, Lou? There's Children of the Sun, which takes us into a real sci-fi world. Working with Children of the Sun with Gareth Worthington. Sorry, I wrote his name wrong.
It's okay.
Yeah, the author's Gareth Worthington.
Yeah,
and
Gareth's a great
working...
guy and really imaginative. He's a doctor. He comes from multiple worlds, it seems, and he really brings this futuristic sci-fi world alive to today when it comes to relevance to the environment, relevance to how we need to make good strides as people. And that book is a big scale type book series that we would like to turn into possibly a big movie franchise too.
That sounds amazing. I'm actually a big horror fan, so the creepy Christmas stuff I absolutely love. There's
Right.
one character you should totally check out. It's the Christmas cat in Iceland. Absolutely one of the coolest characters ever. Just saying. Oh, that and the werewolves, the Christmas werewolves.
Yes.
Very cool stuff.
They're in there.
Can you tell us about any original projects you're working on with under the Boilermaker banner?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a number of them, but two that are at the top of our list. When it comes to originals, we seem to be drawn to the historical space. And so I'll lead with one and Phil can follow up on the second one. But the first one that we're working on is called Men of Bronze. And it's a screenplay that was written in the mid to late 80s. And it's a bit of a barn find. It's like that vintage Corvette that's been under a tarp in a dusty old barn that no one remembered, and you rip it off, and it's a split window rare
63.
find that everyone wants.
A 1976 Stingray.
Or that you name it. So that it was written by a black playwright and actor and director in the 80s named William Gunn. And it's called Men of Bronze, and it covers the story of the formation of the 369th Infantry during World War I, which was a segregated all-black unit based out of New York City. And what they had to go through to get the unit formed, through all the prejudices of the day, and how they were shipped over to France. They were not allowed to fight for the United States because of race reasons, but the French, who didn't have the same viewpoints on race as we did, recognized their value and asked the United States, and Blackjack Pershing in particular, if he could utilize their services, and so the U.S. government sort of leased them to France, and they ended up becoming the most awarded infantry unit in all of the French army.
Oh wow!
They received the Croix de Guerre, which is their highest award, and they received numerous awards from the U.S. Army to sort of jump in and celebrate their victories. In the midst of that story, part of that infantry unit, which was known as the Harlem Hellfighters, which is pretty cool, there was a regimental band, like a lot of the infantry units had, and this was led by a gentleman named James Reese Europe. And during this tour of duty, he and the Harlem Hellfighter Band introduced jazz to the European continent for the very first time. So it's a coming together of a lot of different stories. It as a World War I story, it's never been told. This Black experience of this segregated fighting unit has never been told. So it completes the trilogy between between the Buffalo Soldiers on one side, Red Tails in World War II, and you've got this World War I historical story that completes the trilogy of African American involvement in America's wars.
Wow, that actually sounds, I got goosebumps as you were talking about it. It sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It's pretty spectacular. And like that, when it comes to a true story, we have another story that we call The Last Countess, based on the Zamoyski clan in Poland, a royal family. And during World War I and World War II, they had the contentions of the Russians and the Nazis over that effort that clamped down on Poland.
Mm-hmm.
And the story actually takes you into the journey of Jadwiga Zamoyska. And she was one of the many women who became part of the underground resistance in the Polish army. And the men were often on the fields of battle, while the women cared for the families, the children, and also the communication of what was happening. So it's a long saga that we want to bring to life again. And we have the permission from the family. So we're really excited to be running with this one.
That sounds amazing. I'm really excited about that because I think in that part of history, women can kind of be put on the back burner. And I think this would kind of bring them to the forefront. I think that's super interesting. I'm really excited about that. Again, both of these projects gave me chills, guys. This is great.
Yeah, I want to add. I just want to add something to the Last Countess story, because it's similar to Men of Bronze. It's a story that has not yet been told. Believe it or not, we have a story centered around World War II and the Nazis' occupation of Poland, and what you have is the untold story of 35,000 women who took the Polish soldiers' oath to defend Poland, the Polish Constitution, against the Nazi occupation. So these brave women who were oftentimes were put to work by the Nazis as secretaries or whatever other period terminology they used for those kind of jobs. And these women, known as the AK, they took the opportunity to subvert the Nazi plan through counter-espionage and informing the troops of Nazi movements, and they helped bring down the Nazi occupation through weakening them in Poland. So it's a fabulous story about the power of women in a space that has not yet been told. So we're really excited about that. And as Phil said, we have the cooperation of that royal family that participated in this resistance movement.
And we also have the access to the properties of the family as well. So we want to be as authentic to the story as we can. And we're working with a producer in Poland and putting pieces together as we speak.
That is amazing. I cannot wait. I can't wait. That even the more that Lewis talked about it, I was just kind of, you kind of hitches your breath because it's so many people, it's so many women, and it's a story that hasn't been told, and that's so important, especially now where women are telling their own stories instead of having their stories told for them. And I think that that's really super, super cool. Right. So that kind of brings me to my next questions. Have networks and studios changed what they're interested in acquiring since COVID?
I'd say so. I think, it's not just networks and studios anymore. You have, the cable channels that are still trying to create shows as originals. Then you have the streamers that are really taking over to a high degree. And so there's a lot of different aspects of the marketplace. Like the networks, they're hitting their old bread and butter target markets. Streamers are going for giant international space. So yeah, the marketplace is a little different depending on who you're talking to. But since COVID, I think a lot of people want positive stories. They want a breath of what is the word I'm looking for? Just hope and truth. I
Mhm.
believe we're due for some truth and pursuit of hope, and watch these characters from current times to, tens of decades ago to the tens of decades ahead with all that hope. Let's try to see how us as a human collaborative can make our way through things. So I think with that comes a lot of patience when it comes to developing shows. It takes a while, and that marketplace, you got to find that right marketplace for that idea that you have, either that book or that original idea. And like examples like Queen's Gambit is a huge hit. That show took 30 years to make.
I had no idea that it took 30 years to make it.
30 years, and it was a
So
book,
great.
and it was a spin, and those producers worked on it. Like Lewis and I are working on our projects, and they went down the road, oh, let's make a movie, and then they realized, well, maybe this is better served as a limited series. 10 years later, 12 years later, 15 years later. We're not hoping to take that long to do stuff, but sometimes it happens, and that's why we have a number of projects that we are invested in and in love with. And another example is Bridgerton. Bridgerton is a huge hit on Netflix.
Mhm.
That too was a book series that was produced 2 decades ago, I believe.
Oh wow, I had no idea. Thank you.
So there's times for these stories to drop, and if COVID has made a difference in our world right now, we're starting to pay attention to what we want as a people. So I think that's the beauty of storytelling, is that you can reach an audience. We know that they're out there for the projects that we're working on.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, because you do need that hope and that positive. And it's been a very hard year and a half for many people. I mean, what was it? One of the biggest shows on Netflix was The Great British Bake Off.
Yeah. It's my favorite show.
It's a happy show. Everybody's always happy. And it was one of those shows that I think people kind of got surprised by. Speaking of COVID, I heard that one of you escaped from LA and moved to Hawaii very early on in the COVID apocalypse.
Yeah.
Tell me about Hawaii. I've never been there.
Yeah, Hawaii is pretty spectacular. I was lucky enough to honeymoon there nearly 20 years ago with my wife, and on that trip, I realized this is a place that I would love to spend some time in my life, and then more beyond just a vacation trip. And my wife and I had like a contingency plan all along that, if the shit were ever hit the fan, we're going to Kauai, and that's what ended up happening. We just said, okay, this is a good time to take a break and just try something fresh right now and pivot. So it's worked out. We're on the North Shore. We have a good bunch of friends that have always lived there. So it's a home away from home, and it's currently the home right now.
That sounds fantastic. I've seen just beautiful pictures, and it's probably, you got away from the mainland before everything.
Yeah, I'm back here right now, just prepping CSI Vegas, but I'll be back there soon. And the beauty of COVID's, it's not such a beauty, but what it's done is allowed us to understand that we can work and live remotely. And that's something I've been able to achieve. Lewis and I have continued to do what we're doing with Boilermaker every day, and as if we're in the same room together. So there is a huge advantage to how our technology has allowed us to stay connected.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Lewis, you were in Vancouver filming Superman and Lois during all the COVID restrictions. How did that actually affect your production?
COVID has been, as everyone can imagine, a massive disruption for all of our normal habits and processes. So making a TV show in COVID during COVID times. We started prep in August, last August, and we started shooting in October. We've had 3 shutdowns because of COVID, or pushes because of COVID. And it's definitely, it's complicated. Everyone has to, the show is for Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers has done an absolutely phenomenal job of exceeding safety protocols and going above and beyond what everyone says needs to be done to keep the crew safe and working at the same time. So we all get tested 3 days a week. And we have to wear masks and social distance, and it takes longer on set to get anything done because people need to stay out of the way of another group coming into work, and masks have to be worn for protection, and the cast has to take them off when they're about to act, and they hand them to people. And it's there's just a lot to consider on it, but I have to say it's good news that we're starting to come out of it the other side. I think the fact that the film industry has managed to continue to create during this downturn speaks to the modern ingenuity that the industry has always used, and really calls back to the sort of early days of Hollywood and the historical ingenuity that was needed to create an industry from nothing, and to create the cameras and build the dollies and use the lights and create all this stuff that only existed for us. So it's a real pat on the back to the industry to once again be able to reinvent and redesign how they approach the job to get things done.
Yeah, I was recently watching a behind the scenes of a TV show that was filming during the height of COVID, and they basically had to change everything from costuming, how that was done, to you had a night crew, and the night crew didn't blend over to the day crew, and people were only allowed to work so many hours. I think it really does. I think you're absolutely correct. It shows the ingenuity of people in Hollywood, because you have to continue even though everybody else is like shut down. And the fact that there's new movies coming out, and all the way through COVID, HBO Max was streaming, first run movies. And it was so interesting to watch the industry pivot from, big Hollywood blockbusters and a movie theater to pivoting to, watching them at home as a first run.
Right.
That was so interesting, as I'm very interested in film. So it was very interesting to see that pivot in the industry. It was so quick. Mm-hmm. And I as someone at home, staying at home, I really appreciated having that new media to watch.
Yeah, it really felt like we were sort of helping people's mental health or sanity to keep going. And what we've learned through the process, through all the testing and all the contact tracing that Warner Brothers has been engaging in, is that if you wear your mask and you stay relatively 6 feet away, which is nearly impossible to do all the time on a film set. So everyone did their best, but we had virtually 0 cases of transmission of COVID on set on all of Warner Brothers shows that they're producing during the COVID time. I think it's 0.1% they were able to attribute to COVID transmission while on set, and that beats the national average by like 80%. Yeah. So the protocols work, the testing, the mask wearing, you do those things, and your chance of spreading it to other people is quite low. So it's a good lesson for us. Absolutely. I think maybe there are other people in the world that should have taken the lesson from Hollywood. But no, that was fantastic. I'm super excited because I have a few minutes, just very few minutes. I'm super excited I did binge watch
5 episodes of Superman and Lois, and I gotta say, I'm really, really enjoying this version of Superman. I love that he's fallible, he's human, you know, he's got 2 kids, he's married, you know, Lois is kind of on her own journey with her own villain. And I like the fact that they're just very human. And it's not, you can kind of see yourself in some of the characters. And I really appreciate that. And it's such a grown-up version of Superman that I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
Yeah.
My husband's like, he needs to watch it now. So but it's fantastic, and I'm super excited about it. I can't wait to see what the rest of the series, like what the rest of the season is going to be like.
That's great. Yeah. Showrunner and creator Todd Helbing with Greg Berlanti have really built a unique approach to the superhero story, especially the Superman story. All those things that you said. He's a father. He's fallible. His kids are mad that he's at work too much, and yet they don't know they never knew he was Superman until the pilot. So it really grounds a very unimaginable world in a very familiar and family driven way. So we're all quite proud of being able to tell a superhero story in a way that sets it apart from the other superhero stories in the CW space.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Like I said, I binge watched it. Because I watched the first one and then I had to walk away for a couple hours, but I was like, I just want to know what happens in the next like episode. But I'm also super excited for CSI Vegas. I'm super, super excited. I have a certificate in forensic science. Shh, don't tell anybody.
Ew. Wow.
But
what
cool.
drew you to that?
I have an archaeological background as
Cool.
well. So it was something that I was interested in, and I went to university in England. So there you can get certificates as well. So when I was doing my friend's science certificate, I was like, I would sit there and I would totally binge watch like CSI. We'd have it on Sky Plus, and we would watch episodes back to back to back. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the story is. Is the story going to continue from where it left off, or is it going to be a different take on the story?
Yeah, the series for 15 years, it ended on with a 2-hour series finale that Lewis directed, actually. And the exit of our 2 heroes, Grissom and Sarah, Billy Peterson and Georgia Fox, they sail off into the sunset, so to speak. And this new iteration 5 years later, there's a case that pops up that puts all of their previous cases in jeopardy and may be a problem for the lab. So they get called upon to come back and work with an all new cast that is in the CSI lab in Las Vegas. So the 2 forces combine to go figure out how and what is afoot. And it's a whole new adventure, familiar place, familiar world, and it should be pretty fun to watch. It's a 10-episode order right now, and maybe it goes another 15 years. We don't know. We'll see.
It was super popular before, so
yeah.
And science has changed, so that should be interesting to see how the new forensic science is kind of integrated into the new show, because that was one of the things that I liked about CSI. It was very grounded in science, and many of the techniques that were discussed were scientific techniques that were being done out in the field. So that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about it, because it wasn't outlandish, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
So I'm super excited.
I'm glad to hear it. It should be good. I think we'll find out when we start airing next week after CBS upfronts, and that'll probably be end of September is my guess, but don't quote me yet. But we're started production 2 weeks ago, so it's in the works.
Yes. So excited. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for your time. I really appreciate being able to sit down and talk to you guys about some of the new projects you have coming up and some of the projects that you're working on now. Just want to say thank you. And from US Book World, thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much.
Whether working separately on today's hottest new shows or producing tomorrow's next hit series under their Boilermaker Entertainment banner, I can't wait to see what's next from Phil Conserva and Louis Milito. This is Tony Miller signing off from the US Book Show. Phil and Louis, do you have anything you want to say to our listeners? This is Phil Conserva
and Louis Milito
of Boilermaker Entertainment. We are happy to be a part of this segment, and you're listening to JeanBookNerd.com.